good? Good, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. It's 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Mike, are you taking the roll?
Commissioner Aplikowski? Here. Commissioner Hoyman?
Here.
Commissioner Steeler?
Here.
Commissioner Wagner?
Here.
Commissioner Young?
Here.
Vice Chair Stender?
Here.
And Chair Gerard?
Here.
Thank you.
I ask you if you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented or with changes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We've come to the time where it's the open forum. We wish, if anyone wishes to address the Planning Commission on any issue, we ask you to please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Spend a couple of minutes giving your thoughts. If you're here, depending where you got your information for the Forest Lake Garage condos, originally, the intent was to hold the public hearing here tonight, but since it was inadvertently not noticed legally correctly, the city council will host the public hearing. I don't know what date that is, but whenever.
February 9th.
February 9th. But if you are here, it's not like we got a roaring crowd, so if you do have comments during the presentation, we often will take comments. And we'll make sure they get in as part of the record then. So does anyone wish to speak this evening at the open forum? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the open forum. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda considerations. There's one item A, approve the minutes from the regular meeting of January 14th, 2026.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Yes.
One abstention. Motion carries. We'll move to our regular agenda item. It's item A is Forest Lake Garage condos located at property identification number 20.032.21.12.0006, case file number PZ25-1390 and 1391. Be two parts, the planned unit development, final plan, and the final plat. And Steve?
Yes, I will be presenting. And you'll be quizzed on that PIN number at the end of the meeting.
I'm ready.
So I come before this committee with a commission with a Forest Lake Garage condos. Now, this is the final plat and final PUD. In October, we heard the previous preliminary plat, preliminary PUD that were approved by both by the City Council with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Just to remind you all that this request is for the final plat, final PUD for Forest Lake Garage condos, which is a proposed development on roughly 30 acres parcel just south of Interstate Companies. You can see that right there, and just north of the Forest Lake Airport. Tonight is really about confirming what's in front of you at final plat is consistent with, and in some ways more conservative than what was approved at the preliminary stage. The overall concept hasn't changed, but the plans have been refined. The PUD isn't being used here to push the envelope, it's being used the way it's intended. The flexibilities you'll see tonight are the same types of issues discussed at preliminary plat, just refined now that engineering and environmental constraints are fully understood. At preliminary plat, the site was reviewed with 121 garage condo units. One thing I want to add is that's a number that was identified by staff by counting the units. What was identified by the applicant was 100 to 150 units. As the project moved into final engineering, the applicant had to work around wetlands and required easements, which reduced the number of feasible units. What's important here is that the building's access and overall site layout didn't grow. The unit count went down because of real on-the-ground constraints. And again, that unit count went down based on our counting the units that were a part of the plan. I put these two plans on top of each other so you can kind of see what the changes are as we went through. As the plans were refined, wetland boundaries and required easements limited where buildings could be placed. That reduced the feasible number of units from what was shown at preliminary. The reduction reflects site constraints, not a change in project scope or utility. You can see here, this is a wetland that was identified through review that impacted, you could see it impacted where the units could go and change the location of the facilities or of these units, these buildings on that south side of the property. Also, as the project moved from preliminary to final plat, the overall layout and access didn't change, but the details were finalized through engineering and agency review. Each site still has one primary access with a second access reserved only for emergency use. Here's primary access for the garage condos and secondary access for, oh yeah, sorry. There you go. Here's your primary access with secondary access. The secondary access has worked closely with our police and fire department, and we'll use controlled, the emergency will be reserved only for emergency use and controlled by the fire department. Internal private drives are set 50 feet wide so they can handle both parking and fire access. Utilities that were shown conceptually before are now fully engineered, including a water main extension along Forest Road North and sanitary sewer throughout the site, all built to city standards. The stormwater design was defined and simplified, going from 5 ponds, as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, into 4 ponds. These two were combined into 1, 2, 3, 4, with this large linear one. The reduction reflects site constraints, not a change in project scope or utility. Also, as the project moved from preliminary to final plat, the overall layout and access didn't change, but details were finalized through engineering and agency review. Facilities that were shown conceptually before, blah, blah, blah. The stormwater design was refined and simplified, going from 5 ponds down to 4. Now you've heard this before. Forest Road North still doesn't meet city collector standards, and as discussed at preliminary plat, the applicant remains responsible for the cost of those improvements, which will be handled through a coordinated public project. Finally, all reviewing agencies, including the city engineer, fire chief, building official, and Rice Creek Watershed District, have reviewed the final plans, and the Watershed District has already issued a conditional approval. Environmental features weren't just protected, they were actively shaped. They actively shaped the final design. Wetlands and woodlands influenced where buildings could go, which in turn affected unit count, landscaping, and circulation. This is a good example of why the PUD tool exists. You've got multiple buildings, shared infrastructure, phase development, and individual ownership. The flexibilities being requested, lot size, landscaping, parking, layout, and limited outdoor storage are all tied to making that model work on this specific site. Staff supports the requested flexibilities because the final plan stays within, and in some cases below, what was already reviewed at preliminary. The flexibilities improve how the site functions while still meeting the intent of the zoning code and comprehensive plan. I wanted to touch on the landscaping flexibility. Landscaping is a good example of where flexibility produces a better result. Much of the site is wetlands, stormwater facilities are utility corridors, forcing the full number of trees would put landscaping in places where it couldn't survive or meaningfully screen the site. I want to focus on a lot of the, and we'll go on further slides, is these are the code requirements. The preliminary identified 46 overstory trees and 154 understory trees and shrubs. That 46 has been reduced to 24, but the understory have remained the same. The reason for the 24 is largely because of the city and water management district requirements for a lot of the easements and the shared infrastructure that ate up a lot of the space that would have been previously located. This right here is the preliminary landscape plan that was provided with the preliminary plat. The trees here on the north side along this wetland or the stormwater pond are ones that were targeted as being essentially would have a low survivability rate. The ones here on the south side were impacted by the new stormwater pond that was set as a requirement, as well as some of the easements that were put on this property from the city. Here is the current landscape plan that's been proposed. The request isn't about doing less, it's about doing what actually works. Much of the open area on the site is wetlands, stormwater facilities, or utility corridors. If we force the full number of required trees, staff believes we'd be planting them in places where they wouldn't survive or provide meaningful screening. Staff supports the flexibility because it better meets the intent of the code and protects environmental resources. The original application described a range of roughly 100 to 150 units. The plan reviewed at preliminary was 121, and again, based on counting, not any communication from the applicant. The plan reviewed at preliminary was 121, and the plan in front of you tonight shows 105 due to site constraints. Staff's recommendation to cap the project at 150 recognizes that original range while ensuring that any future increase in intensity comes back for review. The recommended conditions are largely implementation focused, things like engineering corrections, phasing, and long-term maintenance, and don't change the overall project concept. And many of these are already in work and being finalized currently between the city and applicant. Tonight's role is really about confirming what the final PUD stays consistent with what was approved at preliminary, and the flexibility still makes sense for this site. Your recommendation helps inform the city council's decision. Final decision, what's before you tonight is refined and in some ways less intense version of what was already approved with targeted PUD flexibility to address real site constraints. With that, the applicant is here. If you have any questions for them, and do you have any questions for me?
Questions of staff?
I do. In the history of Forest Lake, do we have any, I know we have condominium projects, but do we have condo projects like this, or is this unique?
Yeah, this is unique. This is a a new kind of use that has developed around the country really, and and the experience that our applicant has around the area with developing these.
So when we approve other condominium projects, do we as a city get into the rules and regulations and covenants and conditions, and because I'm as planning commission, we kind of have to suss out the unexpected, right? There's somebody, and that's what I'm looking at this project, and my understanding, you can build out your garage, you can have heat and electricity and gas and plumbing. I assume, I'm not sure if there's plumbing or not allowed in there. And okay, then what if someone spends the night in their storage unit, which they're not supposed to? It's not a primary residence, I understand that. And so I don't know if the city should, like, what happens when someone spends the night, spends a week in their condo, garage condo? Who enforces that, and how? And it seems simpler with residential condominium units because we have certain residential laws and rules, but when you get into industrial and commercial, there's more variables. And what kind of, can a business, like if you're a business and you have let's say you're an auto repair of some kind, maybe a glass shop, and your current shop is just, you're out of space, but you've got this garage condo, and maybe you expand your business into the garage condo, and you've got one of your employees working over there. Is that part of the intent of this? And does it create, I don't know if the city needs to be involved with these rules and regulations and restrictions, or do we just leave it to the builder, which I assume then there's a condo association or an owner's association, and then they make their own rules and regulations. So these are questions I have that are on my mind as I look at this.
And those are valid questions. We did talk about them some, I think, maybe at the Planning Commission and at the City Council level this fall. That is a commercial condo association that will manage and maintain. We have reviewed their declarations, so that is the governing documents for each of the owners and their roles and rights and responsibilities. Part of the review is to ensure that we do not have any sort of residential and living uses in the facility themselves. Well, generally condos are self-governing because you do have that board and you've got all of those neighbors within close proximity to one another. We also do have, if I remember right, conditions of approval, and we could verify with Steve, that these would not be able to be residential living units.
Right.
And so the combination of our entitlements, saying, no, you cannot live there, and then those HOA declarations would allow us to be able to enforce the rules of the approvals the city's granted, but then also work with the association board in the event that there needed to be some further enforcement action. So yes, we do review them, but that's more done on the legal level than the planning commission level.
And the city's thought of that and is comfortable with where
Yes.
they're at on the declarations.
Yes,
Okay.
there are a few minor amendments we're working through, but we anticipate those will all be finalized before the city council approval.
I understand your concern, because these are essentially tiny houses.
Yeah. it
They've
could be.
got water and sewer, and electricity to handle hot plates and
Oh, you could build
dorm-
a kitchen. Why not
dorm
build a kitchen?
I mean, so, yes, I can see some challenges, but I do expect, knowing how the applicant has handled some of their other storage facilities, that they will have strong and ongoing handle on the HOA. But, yeah, this could go south in a real,
Just one of those things we haven't worked with before.
well, and remembering the airport, you know, there have been fussles over, you know, the inclusion of a commercial kitchen or somebody staying overnight or et
Someone
cetera. and-
creating an event center out of one of these garages.
Right, and so, you know, that we have the history that says it is important to ask the questions. When we talked about the preliminary plat, I'm still concerned about snow removal and snow storage, and quite frankly, as a public works person, this would be a freaking nightmare to try and plow, and especially if we actually went back to our normal snowfalls. Did the city engineer have any concerns about, I know when we talked earlier, it was, we're going to put the snow in those ponds, because it'll melt there anyway. How will the edges of those ponds be protected so that they don't degrade when snow is piled in there? That's still a concern for me, is figuring out snow storage. There are going to be complaints about how fast it happens, whatever, but I am concerned, since the city will inherit those ponds, we will be maintaining them in the future, correct?
These are private stormwater ponds.
Okay, so the easements that we're requiring for stormwater maintenance and access does not imply that,
I'd have to double check with our engineering team exactly which easements. Generally, the easements we do want to access are for those wetland areas. I'd have to go back and just double check the review. I do trust our engineering team has reviewed this and is confident the design would conform to the engineer standards for pond specification and associated snow storage. If you can give us a minute, we could take a look at those easements, but I do believe that they're all going to be privately maintained in perpetuity. I don't doubt we also maybe do need to put easements on them in the event that there would be failure, but I can double check those.
Because looking at their shape and depth, they're gonna fill. I mean, they're gonna fill with sediment, and I want to make sure that over time, since there is a large amount of impervious area here, that they still maintain over time the capacity to do their job.
Other comments? I have one. There was a fair amount of talk on the preliminary on the outside storage, how that was all being handled. What's the latest and greatest on how, who's controlling that? Is it only eligible for the condo owners? Or is there going to be additional try that again, additional outside people coming in to store there? What's the plan?
Well, if you remember correctly, the recommendation of this board was to not approve it, and the city council took that recommendation
That's the
into
question.
account. And then, yeah, and said that we will do that as it pertains to the ownership of, or the ongoing maintenance of, or who can put stuff there. It is very restrictive. What we're saying is very restrictive to what can be put there. It can't be expanded in the specifics within our the conditions. Really kind of like limit that to be that outdoor storage without expanding any, if that gets to your question.
So is it only available to condo owners, or outside parties can rent there too?
I do believe that they would allow for outside parties to rent there as a share of the association. And looking through those association declarations, they do define the outside space as having that ownership interest equally as much as those indoor units. So it's, I believe, to kind of answer your question, could you just pull up there on a Friday and say, hey, could I park here? I don't believe so without you actually purchasing into that association.
And then one other question, which is just a curiosity, and we don't have any responsibility for it, but do we get sack and whack for each of those units?
We do.
Excellent answer.
I do want to just address really quick Commissioner Young's inquiry about easements. Those easements that are referred to in the staff report are the private easements for the shared access parking, utilities, stormwater for the association. So those wouldn't be public easements though for over the stormwater. Those would be for the association, and then there would be a maintenance agreement likely with the watershed on those with that association.
Thank you.
Yep.
The contractor's yard that we've talked about, that is that space on the southeast corner, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We've worked really hard at the airport to try and have that at least reasonably aesthetically cool. They put good work into screening in the condo area, but I see no provision for screening under the contractor's yard, and that's the part that's going to be the least desirable view as one drives along Forest Road. In fact, it looks like the parking goes right up to the property line. What is the plan for screening that contractor's yard? And it would probably be wise to have larger screening than low shrubs.
Yeah, it's not included in the landscape plan, any foliage for screening that from that south side.
But that property does need to come back for site plan review at the time of construction of that building. You're not improving entitlements outside of the future use of that property.
As I'm looking at it, when they come back, they're going to have to make a major shift if there is to be any screening there, because it's right up against the road. See where I'm looking at?
So this is the actual final plat? Sound, is this what you were looking at?
Okay, I must be looking at the wrong plat then, because one, whoop,
Oh, no, so
There.
this is preliminary.
yes, and
This
and
is
you
the
see
final.
where the parking is, just right up against the road, right of way. And quite frankly, a significant amount of the parking takes up the space that as you look to the north where the landscaping is, that would be where the landscaping would be, is more than half of their parking.
I understand the concern, but it isn't a vetted site planner entitlements on this. So at the time of site plan review of this southern parcel, we can look to see if there needs to be a more well-established buffer, that landscaping or that parking, the whole building needs to be shifted slightly to accommodate for additional landscaping through there. I will note that on the far south side of the property, there would be potentially some concerns for landscaping, just because there is kind of a drainage swale along that side that will need to be preserved. But I do think that the applicant probably hearing this tonight may be able to come back with a more favorable design at the time of site plan review.
I just don't want anybody to be blindsided.
Other questions, staff?
On the outlot where they're going to be using for outdoor storage,
So I just would like to clarify that the outlot at E is where the outside storage will be,
yes.
okay?
Is there any proposed plantings around there or just the existing?
It is just existing, it's in an existing woodland area. So they, when they did meet with the planning or the city council was favorable to having a portion of the outside storage that they proposed. I do believe that this is a smaller area, so that it would be encompassed by the woodlands that are already existing in that area.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the applicant is here. Would you like to say a few words? We might grill you just a bit, so if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Austin Hallberg, address 13129 Geneva Avenue North, Hugo, Minnesota 55038. My name is Austin, representing Hallberg Marine on this development with our developer Scott here, and he'll come introduce himself in a little bit. We got 3 generations of family business here, looking to grow in the Forest Lake area, and this is something that we've been thinking about for quite a few years and decided now is the right time to do it. And we're really excited about the project. So if you got any questions for me, otherwise I'll have Scott come up and he can probably get some of the more detailed questions for you guys.
Any concerns with the discussion you've heard so far?
Me personally, no, I know that Scott's got some really good answers to some of the current concerns that you guys have been talking about, so.
All right, let's bring Scott up then.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioner Scott Peterson, 8860 152nd Street North, Hugo, Minnesota. Again, representing the applicant here with Hallberg Marine. This is our 3rd time in front of you guys. Staff's been great. It's been a good partnership. I think we've put in front of you a really good final plat and final PUD. And I know we've talked a lot about some of these nuances over the last couple of months, but happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions of the applicant?
Heard my concerns about snow storage. Any thoughts or concerns on your part?
I think if you look at this page, what's a little bit challenging, and I've said this before, is just the pure scale of this. I mean, this is a 30-acre parcel, right? And so, Stephen, if you can grab your cursor, but, you know, like, just to put it as an example, at the right-hand side of Building 11, right there, that's the equivalent from a square footage standpoint to about 10, 11 parking stalls, right? So when you think of a shopping center or movie theater, when they do that big plow up and they leave that mound, right? That's an example of kind of where we're positioned to do that. I would also say we 100% have to get snow removal right? As the developer, as the owner, as the person who's going to manage the HOA. I mean, not providing the access and the clean access. I mean, we're ultimately going to be selling these at a price point, you know, in the several $100,000 range. So that's something we're committed to get right. This is a plan that we think we vetted with the city, we vetted with our engineers, and we think this is the way it's going to happen. If something does need to change down the road, we'll be committed to do that.
And My concern comes from 45 years in public works with engineers who don't have to deal with the snow that they designed facilities around.
Understood.
I got a question along those lines. Say we get a huge snowfall like we did a number of years ago. Do you, as the owners, make plans to have it hauled away?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we can't contain it and store it on site, we would haul it off.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of the applicant?
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
This is really unique.
This is not a public hearing. That will happen at the city council meeting, but if we've got a couple other guests here, if they have any comments they'd like to make, we ask you to come up, state your name and address for the record. We're good? All right, we'll bring it back to the commission for thoughts, further discussions, and before we go too far down this line, page 17 starts the recommendation, just so you know. And you're looking for recommendation to the city council for the final PUD, but you're not asking for a recommendation on the final plat?
You're more than welcome to provide a recommendation, and it will be included in the staff report to the city council for both.
No, I think the motion, what I'm hearing you say, Chair Gerard, is the motion on page 17 only includes the PUD, but I think it was staff's intent that it is motion for PUD and final PUD and final plat with the conditions outlined.
Thank you. All right, so we only need one motion. You can break it into two if you really feel boisterous this evening. But we do make a recommendation on this, but discussion on this project, anything we haven't covered that needs to be covered, now's the time. Hearing none, the chair is looking for a motion.
Chair, I'll make a motion to follow the recommendation to approve the Forest Lake Garage Condo Final Plan Unit Development, subject to the following 4 section conditions.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. If I may request a friendly amendment to also include final plat?
Definitely, yes.
Second.
All right, so if we can add that. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimous. Good luck with your project. We wish you all the best. Good luck with the city. And if you got some heavily discounted units, there's a few of us who want to talk to you.
That are valued at $5 or less. Just want to make
This is a
sure
really
that we
unique
throw that in there.
Project, and it's interesting that it's coming to Forest Lake.
Yeah, good luck, guys.
I was just kidding, Abby.
Just want to make sure everybody in the public that's watching would understand. We do have statutory requirements and things that we can take from people, and it's valued up to $5. So as long as it's $5 or less, we're good.
You can't even get a coffee cup for $5.
Not one with coffee in it.
Actually, the coffee itself will run you more than $5 if you drink it like my wife does. But anyways, we'll move on to item 8, a discussion on the Boost Initiative. Steve, are you presenting here?
Oh, am I ever?
So, so you gave us, before you start, because I just want to set the stage here, make sure that we're not all, we had 17 pages to read, I believe it was.
I hope I'll be quizzing you at the end.
I read it all, don't worry. You want to do a quick overview? Do we want to just start at page 1 and work our way through?
I think I kind of developed a presentation that kind of falls along the lines of a lot of the thoughts there to kind of spur, this is where we're coming from, this is why we're doing it, and then to lead into that discussion. related to the specifics and more, and I received a question from a commissioner today. This is, hey, are we spinning our wheels here? This is something, especially the defining the authorities that we're talking about. That's the real question, is the clarity of what those authorities are. They're kind of implied now. We were having conversations today. The best example, and Susan, 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Young, apologies, Commissioner Young, 2 weeks ago, you said, what are some examples? I'll tell you an example. When you do a public hearing for a PUD, and who does a public hearing for a PUD? And we spent all day yesterday after I got an email from the chair saying, hey, what's going on here? And we, Abby and I and council, went round and around with our code saying, where does it say that we have to have one for the PUD? And it doesn't. It's implied, but there's no clarity. And that's a great example of when you have people trying to interpret these things, what the code says and what the code doesn't have, and where do the authorities lie of who's responsible for what. So that's high level, but really to you, Chair Gerard, I have quick, hey, here's what we were thinking to be able to spur that
We got all night because we start at 6 now, so.
I hope it doesn't take all night.
Got a
But-
couple people glaring at me.
But my kids will be in bed at 8, so it's all a wash at this point. But so again, this is the boost. So again, this is just kind of like what we're talking through, to kind of add clarity to what we're doing, to make to kind of hopefully have some understanding of this is where we're coming from. It's a place of like, hey, we're confused too. Who's responsible for what? It's clear in some places, not in others, and it's just being able to kind of like work with our 10 peer cities as a template. This is what they're doing. This is what works for them. And we're doing these things, but they're not explicit in our code that we should be. It's implied, and that's really what kind of goes at a lot of this authorities discussion. So one thing I wanted to start out with, and this came from my boss, was the pyramid of discretion, and it didn't come from her. It came from the Minnesota League of Cities. So,
Which everyone saw at their onboarding, I'm sure, at some point or another, so.
oh yeah. So again, before we get into those specific code edits, I want to start with this concept. And again, it's from the Minnesota League of Cities, so you know it has authority. And when I did a reverse search because I couldn't find a high quality resolution or high quality image, this is used by about 50 to 75 different municipalities around the country, like just quoting the Minnesota League of Cities, used with permission, et cetera. So this is obviously a really good way to be able to graphically show what we're kind of getting into today. This is called the pyramid of discretion, and like most pyramids, it's much easier to build it right at the bottom than fix it at the top. The idea is simple. Cities have the most discretion when they are writing the rules and the least discretion when they are applying the rules to individual projects. At the base of the pyramid, policy and ordinance drafting, cities have broad flexibility to decide how authority is structured, who makes decisions, and what standards apply. As you move up the pyramid in the day-to-day administration, discretion narrows, and decisions have to closely follow the code as written. Most land use conflicts don't happen when we adopt ordinances. They happen later when we're applying those ordinances to a specific project. And at that point, staff, the planning commission, the city council have much less ability to address underlying issues if the code is unclear. That's where the Boost initiative, all rights reserved, comes in. What we're talking about tonight is intentionally focused on the base of the pyramid, clarifying authority, decision-making roles, and reviewing thresholds before we're in the middle of a project. The goal is not to shift power, but to clearly define it so expectations are set up front, decisions are consistent, and fewer issues surface during application review. The pyramid of discretion, all rights reserved, works best when it's not held together by interpretations, precedent, and, quote, that's how we did it last time, which is guides a lot of what we do, is that's what we did last time. Everything that follows builds on that idea. If we get the structure right at the bottom of the pyramid, the process works better all the way up. With that framework in mind, the next slides walk through how the staff draft, underlined, italicized, bold, draft, proposed code updates, clarify staff authority, planning commission authority, and when items move between the two.
That is why in the past, I have been such a stickler when we are looking at ordinances. And I know it's frustrating, but that is our shot. And so that's why I tend to be really picky about how our ordinances are written, and because we're stuck with them.
I think we are stuck with them. We have the right to change them, but it's our law.
Right.
And we do want to make sure that it's clear, it's concise, and it's, it addresses the regulations that we need that are appropriate when they're appropriate and aren't overly burdensome unnecessarily.
I'll say this slide really boils down to two ideas, which we've laid out in these two columns. On the left is clarity and predictability. One of the recurring challenges we see is uncertainty about who makes a decision and when. These updates are intended to clearly spell that out for applicants, for staff, and for the commission, so expectations are set early and the process is easier to follow. On the right is the process and outcomes. When authority is clear, it creates predictable escalation paths for higher impact changes. It supports transparency and consistency and leads to decisions that are better documented and easier to explain and defend. These two things together aren't about changing outcomes and shifting authority. It's about making sure the process works the way everyone expects it to. From the start of an application through final decision making. Everything else in the presentation builds off these two ideas: clarity up front and better outcomes later. New and clarified definitions that set the framework. Now, this is in reference to the 17 pages that our team has developed. A big part of this update is definitions. We're defining terms like administrative decision, final decision, and minor versus major change. So authority isn't implied, it's explicit. These definitions act as the backbone for everything else in the chapter and will reduce case-by-case interpretation. One of the things that I found in kind of working with Abby as she laments and is very colorful language to describe the code sometimes and how confusing it is a lot of that is where the definitions of these things are and how they're written and what they define in just simple terms, like what's an administrative approval? Those things that we keep saying, hey, what are these approvals? What's a final decision? What is a complete application? These are things that are missing from our code, but they're core to everything. And being able to address those is one of those kind of holes in the swing that we're really trying to address, especially up front. When you see this, think about what we're talking about here in this series of changes that we're suggesting. We are asking for, let's be descriptive, define these authorities, define the roles, define the complexities, the laws, the ordinances, everything that goes in, make sure that it's clear. And then as we go forward in this Boost initiative, we can build off of that into the more clear code, the more understandable code that's easy for staff to understand, and most importantly, for the people of Forest Lake to understand, and developers and applicants who come in and want to invest in our city. So these administrative determinations and interpretation authority. This section formalizes something that already happens. When a use isn't listed exactly, staff evaluates whether it's substantially similar to an involved case. What's new is that the process, criteria, documentation, appeal rights are clearly spelled out in the code instead of being implied. And this is a big part of really what we're coming into. And as Michael was onboarded, his biggest concern, because he really is the gatekeeper of zoning and what uses, what operations can happen. And when our uses are just so largely antiquated and not really up for the modern world. And I went and based on you, I have a lot of examples in the back of a lot of these hypothetical cases that we have a tough time addressing. When you get let's say one of the examples is you could come in and cook something in a place. Just show up, and I live in Stillwater. There is a place downtown Stillwater that allows you to come in and crochet and buy stuff. Now, is that a retail place, or is it like hobby, or is it this, or is it that? Each one of these things impacts a zone, and it comes up to there's really not any wiggle room with, if it's not a use, we have to bring it to the Planning Commission to create the use in our code, when every other city has hey, if there's an administrative determination, is this substantially similar to something that already exists, and be able to have that connection. That's a real big thing that's kind of hindering our ability to be able to quickly pivot and quickly address applicants that are coming in here, like perhaps a garage condo. What is that? Is it storage? Is it a condo? And being able that really the only solution we have is a PUD. And that may not be the best solution, because everything is a PUD now seems to be, indicative of a failure of our code to be able to address the modern world. And that's a big part. As we get farther in here, let's establish authorities and then address some of these. What are the definitions of some of these larger things that everything, not everything is a PUD. It wasn't developed to be everything, but everything that comes in is a PUD because everybody wants these flexibilities and everybody has these operations that are different than proposed and not explicitly out in our code. Minor versus major amendments. This is one of those most important changes. We're clearly separating minor tweaks from major changes. These small, non-impactful adjustments stay at staff level. Bigger changes, anything with public impacts or discretionary that are required discretionary judgment, go back to the Planning Commission and Council. The escalation path is clear and appeal rights remain intact. This is a big part of what we're suggesting here because a lot of these authorities are implied. There's a lot of site plan authorities that are coming in. I want to, one example that we're having, we have a multinational corporation that has a retail outlet here, very large retail outlet. It's out of Arkansas. I don't know if you guys could connect the pieces. They're suggesting building a new facility, small minor facility with some kind of reoriented parking for the pickup. They have online ordering. They're removing the pickup from the front and moving it to the back. These changes don't impact the operations, don't expand intensity. It's just kind of moving thing from another. But our code says it has to come in front of the Planning Commission and go to the City Council and get approved because you're updating this operations as minor as it is. That's one of those things that we would have to go through those wickets and there wouldn't be a comment in public hearing. They'd probably be coming in and complaining about prices are too high or something. But the point is that every time that we have to have these hearings for these minor things, everybody's nodding their head. Staff has built staff reports and developed all these things, and it's not outside of our job duty. That's perfectly fine. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of machinations in delay that happens with these changes that logically we could all agree are minor and are something that should be more or less streamlined. Now that example is not what we're suggesting here because that is expanding footprint, although it is implied in our code that we have that authority, but it's not explicit. That's when I say it, we have that authority. Staff has the authority to approve that as a site plan thing, but it's not explicit. That's what we're saying here is if I look at the code, if Michael looks at the code, if Abby looks at the code, we may come to 3 different conclusions on the path that something takes, and that is not a good thing to be in because we are paid to be supportive, or paid to be the people of contact for our contact for that. Yes, ma'am. Oh, did you?
No, so as you're thinking about these administrative decisions, thinking about a mythical large multinational on a site that has lots of really god-awful traffic patterns internal. Will you, as part of your staff recommendation, be talking to engineering staff about the impacts and effects of changing that traffic flow? And if you are, then I feel differently about it than if not. I gave a ride to somebody today and had ample opportunity to watch the traffic flow through that area and was scared out of my mind, just watching how things work. So I agree that could be a very minor thing, and a company would say, well, why do you have to even have us permit this? But when you are looking at this from administrative, will you be consulting with the rest of your professional staff?
I think that there isn't a development or a proposal that we have that isn't a part of a weekly conversation that we had with both council and our city engineer about everything. We go through everything that's on our docket that we're looking at, administrative or coming before this commission or the council, and get their review of everything. Every site plan review is sent out to every single, we have a list of people, including Ryan, including Amanda, our city attorney, that review these things. We have the watershed districts that go through and help inform our decision, whether it's coming before you or we're making the decision locally.
So this would still require a site plan, and it would still have review, and that was my concern, was making sure that it was going to be a site plan that was reviewed for potential impacts, because none of us can individually foresee stuff. Lots of brains.
And
Come
so,
better.
one thing I want to kind of talk about, especially as we are discussing this, is there is a check and balance here. That there is a path that we could, and we suggested it 2 weeks ago, that we provide for the consent agenda. Here's all the decisions we've made that we reviewed in the last 2 weeks, and then we get in, and then you look at them, and if you start seeing things like, hey, I don't like this and whatnot, then we could like pull back and be able to look at kind of the authorities that we have. Hey, are we doing things right? But again, we're not suggesting anything that we're kind of, that isn't already implied. It's just not explicit. That's what we're just trying to create clarity, so that it is when Abby, God forbid, one day, 30 years from now when she retires from Forest Lake, that next person is inheriting something that's a little more clear and easy to understand and pick up from day one.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify something too for the record when you say there will be site plan? So this is just the, yes, we're using the words site plan, and we have a site plan review application in our code. What will end up happening as part of this is teasing out those administrative approvals, and it might not be a formal application form. It might be that site plan approval happens through the building permit. We don't quite know what that process is yet because we haven't defined that, but I don't necessarily want to set expectations that because right now we have a formal site plan review application, that there's going to be something that directly mirrors that. That's going to be the administrative side. Does that make sense? Because right now, with Michael's help, we do plan review day in and day out. It's just we do that through the building permit review process. Zoning has their review, engineering has their review, public works has their review. So we're not there in defining exactly what those processes look like yet. Those will kind of be next steps in our boost discussions. But I just wanted to at least clarify the record when someone says there will still be site plan review. It might not be that exact site plan review in the code. That makes sense.
So to wrap this little section up is we're going to have some type of internal review process. Other people will be informed that can give input.
Correct.
We can come back to this later.
I have just one question. So you're going to get rid of one meeting and have the decisions made by smaller committees?
No, I don't think we're suggesting getting rid of any meetings, but we're just clarifying the roles of things. That if something comes up, everything that you would have seen before, if anything changes, and you can see it kind of on this screen here, if there's any change at all, if anything's expanding intensity of use, it's still the process. It's these onesies, twosies things that come in that the code is really silent on.
They just streamline it a little bit more.
And just being explicit in what those, and being able to define what these, so that we can point to it and say, this is what it is. And last meeting, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about if a business changes their facade, updates the outside, makes it look prettier and whatnot. According to our code, that needs to come to you guys. That needs to come to the Planning Commission for review and approval, but it's not explicit that that's the case. It's more of these kind of implied, and how do we look at it? And a lot of times that we've erred on the side of like, hey, this doesn't, we don't need to bother the Planning Commission with this business wanting to put up, new faux wood pillars outside their bank. That's really what we're addressing, is how can we just be more define that this is the process, so that you know what you're going to see, and we know what we have the authority to be like, this is good to go. They paid their money, they paid their fees, everything's great on something that's proposed. But this isn't anything like, hey, a big neighborhood's coming in. Guess what, guys? I just want to tell you guys that we just approved 200 houses with 25-foot lots. Have a good day. No, it's nothing like that. It's absolutely these things that really are just kind of help us be more streamlined because, again, Forest Lake is growing and it's going to continue to grow, and everybody around us, every municipality around us, for the most part, are a part of this. All 10 of our peer cities have code that really define what these authorities are, and that's really what we're trying to get to at this point.
Try and make it more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. And so more efficient so that everybody understands the efficiencies and understands where their lane is and when things go up. And I want to reference this right here. So this slide really captures the balance we're aiming for. Staff can efficiently approve plans that simply implement what's already been approved. At the same time, we have clear authority and responsibility to escalate items when impacts warrant commission or council review. Overall, these updates don't expand authority, they clarify it. Again, that's what we're talking about here. The intent is to make the process more predictable, transparent, and fair while ensuring meaningful policy and discretionary decisions remain with the Planning Commission and City Council. I think that's it. And then I have some examples if you want to see them, Susan.
Line them up, man.
Yeah, so we're talking about, this example one is a minor site plan tweaks after approval. The applicant wants to slightly shift parking stalls, adjust landscaping species, or relocate a sidewalk by a few feet after site plan approval. The code doesn't always clearly state whether staff can approve that change administratively or if it needs to come back to the Planning Commission. Why this is not ideal. This can lead to inconsistent handling, delays, or projects returning to the commission for changes that don't materially affect impacts. Luckily, we have a very strong community development director who has enough experience to understand kind of like, this is something that we could say yes to. Despite the code implies we have that authority, it does not explicitly say that we have that authority. Clear criteria for minor versus major changes and who has authority to approve each is really what we're talking about for this example. Example two, changes that fall between minor and major. So we're talking about, again, going back to the facade. The exterior, the building isn't changing, exterior materials or architectural elements do. And again, code isn't clear on whether this requires your review or can be handled administratively. We're overly cautious often to send things to the commission or applicants may assume staff approval is sufficient when it isn't. And that's a big part of some of the things that we're trying to address is be able to be explicit on what approval is, when it happens, and when they can expect it. These thresholds and escalation authority when discretion is needed. And one of the things that we really, as we're writing this code or looking at this code and adjusting the authorities in this code, is explicitly defining those guardrails, the things that we can make decisions on and what rises to the level of requiring going to Planning Commission and being explicit. Some cities are, if you're building, like let's go back to the Pride of Arkansas, that what they're proposing expanding is minuscule. It's 3% of the square footage of the giant building that they're out of. Some municipalities set that limit at 10%. If you stay within 10% of what was approved, staff can administratively make that change. That's not something we're suggesting here, but we would absolutely welcome that authority, but that's not something we're suggesting here. We're taking small steps. Yes, ma'am.
When that large building was proposed and then built, the facade of that building that they proposed was considerably different and would not have done any kind of blending or looked appropriate to this community. And because it had to come before the Planning Commission, we were able, as many cities across the United States have said, no, your standard does not fit in our community. And we do have standards. Another one that I'm thinking about was we have a Broadway district that says that we want a higher standard of aesthetics along that Broadway district. And there has been huge discussion about wanting to have a downtown as it is redeveloped that has some sort of consistent facades and styles that have been successful in other communities building a cohesive downtown. Where do you see the tension between, yeah, we can, you know, it's their facade and they can do what they want with their facade, it's just, you know, brown versus flaming pink. And a community's desire, especially as we move forward in commercial districts and we have unique things coming forward, where it's just the facade, but that can have a really significant effect on the marketing and development and desirability in a community.
That's a great question, Commissioner Young, and I'd like to address it. Many of you may know that I did work in another Washington County community for 10 years that has the National Historic Landmark District, and my role in that community was to oversee their planning, zoning, and design review. And what we did in that community is we had very strict design standards, codified regulations, and then we had design guidelines. And so both of them were used as tools. Guidelines are, you should do this. Standards are, you shall do this. And so in our rules, staff was able to do things like approve changes to paint. We were able to approve maintenance materials as long as they stuck in that shall world. If they started to creep into that should world, like, oh, you shall do them earth tone colors or dark muted Victorian colors, as an example. If they wanted to go outside of that you shall do and get into the design guideline should do, yellow, flaming pink, that's when then things escalated to a different body for review than the administrative. So I think all of that does come down to, this is one step, but there are more changes to the code that need to be supportive of this as well. That can help then, if it's a new building coming in, an entirely new site development, that's always going to come to you. Somebody's putting, 100 square foot concrete structure in muted gray on the back of their already 10,000 square foot muted gray concrete structure. It seems like it's a waste of a lot of resources of us pulling all of the time and energy and everything together to bring that to you to say, look, we met the shoulds and the shells, right?
And I get that. If I don't learn from history, I'm doomed to repeat it. And I'm just, as we're going through this, I'm thinking of examples on the planning commission, like.
Throw me under the bus, Susan.
But you remember some of those challenges and discussions that we've had.
Oh, yeah, do you want an example? On Broadway, there was an auto parts store there. They wanted to paint red. I bet you we killed an hour on that. My personal opinion was, this is their business, it's their business. But there were strong other opinions that didn't fit with Broadway. Well, the business is already there. They were just sprucing her up. Personally, I don't want to see that stuff, but.
And this gets, it's a really good point too about, some things like freedom of expression. It's not freedom of expression, but I will say, having not just worked in one community with National Historic Landmark Districts, but 3 of them, paint color is extremely hard to legally regulate. They do have a right to use their own, want to be hot pink? Want to be hot pink. I think Hudson's got a whole house that's painted that, right? So these are things that we're just gonna have to also flex on and be flexible on. But I think that also leads to some of the design standards and guidelines that we have and really reevaluating some of those as we move forward as well, to make sure that what we have in our code and what the you should do this versus you shall do this really says, no, you shall be this number of feet from the front, or you shall have your parking in the back, versus leaving it a little more open-ended. That can come forward as time comes along. But that is going to be one of those tricky areas. And I hear you, because frankly, I see it, Susan. And I know that we as a community want to have better integrated design. We as staff want that as well. And our hope is that you would also trust your paid professional staff to see the design. If they conform to code, I'm going to say this to you, and I'm going to say it probably many times, if a project conforms to the code, we have little to say no. And so if staff can review those things and say this conforms to the code, it's just wasting the applicant's time, our time, and your time, bringing it to you.
Which goes back to why the code is
Why
so
that base matters.
big, such a big deal to me.
Andy?
Yeah, one little bit of feedback. It makes sense, but the transparency side is what this provides, where there might need to be some accommodation for how do you inform the public that this is happening, where if staff just approves it and all of a sudden someone builds something.
Please don't, I do want to just clarify the record. Staff is not advocating in any way that we would not bring new building construction, major additions, subdivision, like major things would not come before you. These are things that are still important, and we do want to have public eyes and transparency. We do want to inform the community of changes. A lot of the things that we're seeing, though, in those areas where there's been gray since I've been here, I brought up OSI. I think OSI went from stucco to stucco and painted it from tan to blue, or vice versa. It would have cost them probably $5,000 a couple months, not including my time, not including your time, for you guys and to agree with me to say this fits. And those are the ways that we're really just trying to make it a little bit more streamlined and efficient. This is, I think, one of the biggest ways that we can, between this with minor and major, and then also as we start to look at the actual application review processes, this is the #1 way that we can be more business friendly in this community. Because right now, I will tell you, it feels like this code was really built in a world where we did not want growth and development, and now growth and development's at our door, and we're having a really hard time telling them that we do want business here. So I hear you though, Andy, because I am very cognizant of wanting to make sure that we're not appearing as if we're a government that's doing things in a vacuum or behind closed doors or in secrecy.
And I believe, Steve, you mentioned earlier that you would, in the consent area, you would give us a synopsis of the administrative decision.
And that's just one means, that's just one idea. Really, the idea is that we want to make sure that you are kept abreast of these decisions that we're making, so that you at least understand these decisions and more importantly, the public will have them presented on the record for the decisions that have been made. So that is definitely something that we're looking to work with you to codify. What does that look like? What makes sense to you, so that we can make sure that we address that?
Can I ask one question? So like, sometimes if it's just like one person making the decision, they can be kind of go south. In streamlining of this, are you going to have just like maybe a committee of like 2 or 3 or 4 or something like, or say like 5, so you can get, when they vote or whatever, it's not going to be just one person with all the power? That's kind of a question. It's going to be more than one person making
I mean,
the decision.
generally we, so right now, and typically in most cities, our peer cities and in cities across the state, when you have a zoning code and you've got black and white law, it comes down to one person administering that law. That's that top of that pyramid. That's our Michael right now, and Stephen and I, at times, we're also reviewing permits. In those circumstances, no, it's Michael, it's Stephen, it's me. We're here to do that work. We're here to administer those laws. If there gets to be a time where we're concerned with the minor amendments and having a committee, frankly, we're probably not interested or have the capacity to create another committee, because the whole idea is to help streamline the work, to reduce the amount of volume coming here. If it was of a concern, we would just continue to bring it back to the Planning Commission until such time we tweaked our system that maybe you would be comfortable with us reviewing them.
So in other words, we trust you that, that you're educated and knowledgeable in your job and that you can make these decisions.
Well, and we can read black and white law and administer it, right? That's really a big part of what we're hoping. You'll trust your staff. The city will trust its staff moving forward.
And another piece of this is that the decision that would be made by the staff on these minor amendments or changes can be appealed by the applicant and immediately comes to the Planning Commission. And then, we're having this discussion, if that's the case. If we say no to something and they're like, hey, we don't like that answer, hey, it gets kicked up. It becomes a major change. That is what our peer cities are doing, is creating that appeals process and also defining that, which is the appeals process that's currently in our code. It exists, not clear. Clarity is really what we're focused on here.
And when we get to going through the document, I do have a question on J4, but as we go through there.
I know that when we started right off, Chair Gerard had said, hey, maybe we should be going through. I think Stephen's done a great job at a high level and given it a couple examples. I do think that we should probably go through if we wanted to with these changes. I don't want to rush Stephen or assume a role here, Chair Gerard, but I know that there's a lot of dialogue and it's great. The dialogue is good. I also know none of us want to be here till 9 o'clock.
I know that if I'm here,
Or 8
every
o'clock.
minute I'm here is a minute I get to leave early on Friday. So let's stay for the long haul.
Only in your mind.
Okay. So, on the first page, under administrative approval, from what I heard tonight, I think that you probably need to say, Chairman yada yada yada, issued by the Community Development Director or designee without a public hearing or Planning Commission review, because you will not be having Planning Commission review for those administrative approvals, if I understand what I've heard and what I read further. That's the whole reason, is you don't want those things to have to go in front of the Planning Commission.
And we'll clean that up. So yeah, that's exactly what we're getting to.
Still on page 1?
Yep.
All right.
I don't have anything else on page 1. I'm just,
And one thing I wanted to point out, especially that I wanted to look at, is one of our big kind of issues that we have is kind of the definition of PUD. This isn't policy, but the way we keep going back to the definition guiding our policy, if anything, so Michael and I were joking about this a month or two ago, that it says that anything over 2 buildings on a parcel, it requires a PUD, and then anything that, what is the, I want to say, it's right here, never mind. It's like having 2 or more principal uses on a single parcel of land may include blah, blah, blah. But the code says, it basically means everybody has to have 2. So it says if you have 1, you have to have 2. If you have 2, you have to have a PUD. And basically it means everything's a PUD. And that's one of the things that we're really looking at kind of addressing. And one of those things, that's it. So that'll be kind of like that. One of those ways is kind of looking at that definition, which was overly complicated to begin with.
are we on that multifamily industrial definition? Because I think that it would be clearer if you flipped that sentence around. All right? Because it does look like shall have at a minimum, all multifamily commercial industrial sites shall at a minimum have 2 principal buildings or 2 principal uses on site. So I I think that if you flip that around, that PUDs are only required when there are two or more principal buildings or two or more principal uses on site. That,
Yeah, we'll take a look at that, yeah.
Yeah, that one needs to be worked.
Yep.
yeah,
All right. You know, you renumbered some of this stuff, it makes me complicated now, because,
And this is what the code says now.
Right.
That's
no,
what,
no, no, I have my notes, and then it looks like this is slightly changed, it'll take me, go ahead.
working on it.
but yes, so that we were identifying that our current code says that, but yes, that is why we're looking at the, addressing it, because it does create like a dragon eating its tail of, that's your only option.
And I'm going, and I don't know about the rest of the folks, but I'm going on what was sent out. I
don't-
got it.
I don't think I've changed it.
Okay, great. Anybody else until we get to 153.0062, B2?
Hey, John, man,
No, I don't have page numbers.
well, start counting at one. But we started, now we're on
Page 2. Page 2.
So we're all on the same page. Starts
Which
with
is
word-
page 2, I hear.
Huh?
Which
Yeah,
is page 2.
We're on page 2.
We're all on the same page? Page 2?
153.006B2. Y'all mentioned tonight that we have a lot of new concepts nationally and around here that we've never seen before, and we had one tonight. So why are you saying that no longer the city council may direct staff to conduct a study to determine if particular uses? I guess it, to me, it lessens the policymakers' ability to require studies to help inform their decisions about new, unknown, unforeseen things that may be coming before the city.
We were just suggesting removing that because it's redundant with the zoning amendment section.
So this is retained somewhere else?
Yeah.
Where?
In the zoning amendment section, that's my notes. I want to see if they're in this.
Okay, well, I'm going to see it later, right?
I hope.
You may or may not see it later, because what we are also doing as we're going through this is taking out redundancies that are already somewhere else in the code. So what we can do as we continue to do this is, on the right-hand column, Steve has put, this is covered in the zoning amendment section. We will specifically start referencing code sections. This is already in the code elsewhere.
Okay.
We're trying really hard not to pull policy out of code. What we're trying to do is eliminate the duplicity of policy and process.
And that makes sense to me, but the one I'm working off of doesn't have the right-hand stuff.
Yeah, I agree, because it has the yellow, when I made it a PDF, it made these yellow boxes that had all those notes on it.
Right. Okay.
Noted. Next time, it'll just be the Word document.
Real quick before, be sure that you're taking it out in this section, doesn't remove it from some
Oh,
line to everything else.
that's absolutely right, yeah. You're right. I can't wait to see, what I can't wait to see is the meeting minutes when we talk about page 2.
All right. Anybody else as we get to C?
I'm good to page 4.
Okay. Wow. C, we've got again, if I don't learn from history, I'm doomed to repeat it. And while we may have a really, really good, and we do have a really, really good community development director now, but when we write this code, it says the community development director solely well, I'm putting the word solely in there because there's no other entities specified, may determine whether proposed use is substantially similar to an existing permitted accessory or conditional use. I'm okay with that, but then I get down to 2, and that singular decision will affect all future applications. And I have some concerns about that.
So I think, Susan, what we're gonna do is at least just make a note. And maybe what we can also do is follow up. Because what I'm hearing you say is the idea of administrative determinations of similar uses is probably pretty reasonable. Those are my words, not yours. But you've got some issues with number 2, and in that you're concerned about the long-term impacts for future uses. Let us take a look at that. Definitely legal counsel is going to be consulted on these, and so it's good that you flag this kind of stuff. I don't, not that we can't have the conversation tonight, but I think let us take that back, hearing that just gut instant reaction from somebody else, and then let's see as we work through this.
In my house, we talked a lot about the camel's nose. And that one thing looks like a little tiny thing, but then the camel nose is a little further under the tent, a little further under the tent. Pretty soon you got the whole camel in the tent. And so scope creep is what some people call it. And my concern is that this, I don't want to say format, this policy and procedure has the opportunity to creep.
Yeah, and exploit kind of that authority and make it more than it is. Yep,
Yeah.
that's a good note. The camel's nose is the first time I've ever heard that. It's always been a boiling frog.
Yeah, but somebody who raises Arabian horses.
There you go. It comes from background and perspective. There you go. And you said, Chair, you had comments on page 4?
Well, are we done with page 2?
Are we?
3? All right, my comment on page 4 is got to do with number 4, determination. I think it belongs on page 3 between 1 and 2. You know, you talk about the purpose, I think we ought to say who's making the authority and then go on to tell you what the difference is. I'm fine with how it's written, I just
Great
think
observation.
it's in the wrong slot.
And I have a question about how it's written. It's, such determinations shall be final unless appealed in accordance with this chapter. But how does anybody know that a decision was made? You can't challenge something you don't know about.
I think that's usually the applicant's ability to appeal. So if there is the determination that, let's just say, let's just make up uses tonight. Like, okay, tonight, garage condos. If we had made the determination that garage condos were substantially similar to mini storage, right? Mini storage isn't allowed in this district, right? So, sorry, applicant, this isn't one of those things. They can appeal that decision to you.
Another example, we've got that subdivision that has come and gone and come and gone and come and gone, just north of 97 off of one of the F streets. Is it Fern or something else where it's Fondant, yes, thank you.
Just north of 97 west heading towards. does that
Right
Forest
across
Road?
from Interstate, essentially. It's gonna be across 97 from Interstate.
Section of Fondant down there.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify something for the record? Has the commission seen that before? I'd only known the concept plan to come before you.
We saw the, yeah, we
Concept.
we saw the
We've only seen
concept.
the concept.
You said come and gone, and I wanted to verify that there wasn't some history that the staff wasn't aware of on that site.
No,
Okay,
no.
perfect, great, sorry. Thank you.
the word in the neighborhood is that it went away, and then it suddenly came back, so that's what I meant by come and gone.
Okay.
So this, I guess this wouldn't apply because it is a subdivision
That
and
is
therefore would
subdivision.
have to come in front.
Right, and this is only, I think, about uses, we're still in the section on uses, right? Yeah, so this is just a determination of a similar use,
Okay,
or, or a major, if it's a major or minor amendment to things in the zoning code. Subdivisions still come back before you.
okay, thank you, I'm sorry. But yeah, I agree with you, it's in the wrong place.
Anything else on page 4? Any commissioners? So my only other one is on the sentence A, the third paragraph, text, it starts as text amendments. I think it needs to be zoning ordinance text amendments, just so I have the same verbiage in the 2 paragraphs.
On 4?
I'm just, yeah, A, paragraph 3. Just a simple, I missed it earlier and I said, oh, I bet you they're supposed to say the same thing.
It should say zoning text amendments.
Yes. That's all I got on 4. 5? Nothing on 5? 6?
Paragraph 2, filing requirements. I think that it needs to be clear that it's a request by persons other than staff, council, or planning commission for an amendment shall be filed with the city on an official application form, because I'm not sure that the staff, the council, or the planning commission should do the fee thing. And
Where are you at there?
filing requirements. A request for an amendment to the text of this chapter or a change in the boundaries or designations and shall be filed with the city on an official application form. I have known times that staff, council, not planning commission, but I can see where it could happen, would initiate request for an amendment, especially as we're doing things like downtown planning and things like that.
Yep, we can definitely take a look at that one. I hear what you're saying. I think this is sometimes the extra words that aren't needed in a code, just frankly. I understand the intent that we want to be prescriptive, that private applicants are the ones. We are trying to slim down the code. We'll take a look at this.
I understand the desire to slim down the code, but I also understand litigious societies where somebody says, well, wait a minute, I wanted an amendment, and I had to go through and pay a big fee. Why does the council not have to?
Because we have legislative authority to change our own code as the council wants.
Okay.
So, that is the
All right,
council's privy, but I think we can take a look at that.
okay, thank you.
My only question on this page, is it worth separating out the text amendments from the map amendments? Is it just more straightforward to have it all done one way? And
I think what we've learned through our review of the codes in our 10 peer cities is that it helps direct and define which one is each, especially as we get to the deliverables that they need to be able to apply for things. There's things that a map amendment needs that we also define in code, but that a text amendment may not require. So that's why we're taking time to define what those are, so that as we get into those processes, they don't really need to provide all these other things. And that's the other thing we've added later in this is, this only applies to a map amendment, this only applies to a map amendment. Where right now, no matter what you do, you have to provide all of these things.
thank you.
But all of paragraph 2 refers both to text and map amendments.
Yeah. Because they have the same kind of filing requirements of
Okay.
paying fees and doing an application.
So this isn't something that you want to have separated out, text versus map.
Yeah, we separated out in the definitions earlier, this A, and then we follow that on into the, hey, these are what's applicable. And then you can see legal descriptions of subject property, map amendments only, existing and proposed zoning classification, map amendments only, so that we're simplifying those text amendments.
Anything else on page 6? Look at you guys, just have Don smack me in the back of the head here.
So let me be really understanding this. Since you say that you added that the application fee shall apply only to private initiated zoning amendments, and that zoning amendments initiated by the city shall not require an application fee, zoning amendments initiated by the city will still have to be made on the official application form.
I think in this whole general section with filing requirements, we can take a look to make sure that we are not unnecessarily burdening a private applicant in any way we wouldn't affect the city. But I will say we don't pay fees.
I get it, that you still do have to do an application.
And generally, we don't put together applications, but we can look and talk with our legal counsel when we look at all of the filing requirements here.
Well, if you don't do the application, then you really don't need that whole application fee shall apply only to private initiated. Because there won't be an application if the city or the planning commission does it. You don't need that bolded section.
Look at it.
Anything else on page 6?
And you can see kind of like that, how we're trying to simplify the language, say the same thing in less words, more easy to understand, going back to that clarity discussion.
Page 7?
I really hate the term reasonably.
Where you at, Susan?
On page 7, D procedure, paragraph 2. Because you're working so reasonably hard, so understandably hard to clarify things and make things black and white and clear to everybody. That term reasonably
This is on
can
page,
become problematic.
this is on page 7?
This is on page 7. D procedure, paragraph 2, the planning committee and city staff shall have may request additional information from the applicant when reasonably necessary. And I would say when necessary.
Oh, yeah, leave reasonably out.
And I think a lot of that language is that kind of like legal coverage language, but we'll check with.
In some place, we've got to have a definition of reasonably. And I'll look forward to that definition because I don't even want to think about trying to craft it.
Anything else on 7?
Under number 5, it says that the planning commission and staff reports shall be entered, you deleted shall be entered and made a part of the permanent record of the council meeting. So why not? I mean,
Because that is just that's part of business. We can take a look with our council on this, but I think the intent of the zoning code is to say what is the regulation and what is the, basic process. A lot of that is filler in the zoning code.
right. But one of the ways that you figure out if something is consistent with previous decisions is being able to look at that in the city's permanent record of how the decision was come to. And so I was just surprised that the basis for decisions would no longer be part of the permanent records.
They will always be a part of the permanent record. We just don't believe that we need to state that in our code. By statutory, state statute, they remain in our permanent record. But we can take a look to see if that is something that, you know, both our clerk's office and legal counsel would recommend.
To be more efficient, you would have a repository for these. Not have to go search through every.
Which we do, but they're also, I mean,
I'm
the,
just saying that if we want to talk about a great place to keep these, the city council minutes isn't exact.
no, but that is the official public
I
record.
understand it's the official, but like for the efficiency, hey, have we done this before? If you're gonna start going to look back through city council meetings, you're gonna miss stuff.
But some of that is not accessible to the public, whereas the documentation of all the city
I'm
council.
sorry, I was trying to.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
I'm sorry. I mean,
I'm
we're all
sorry,
saying
too.
sorry. Just-
No, nobody needs to be sorry. I think what, you know, it's right that we have to have it part of the public record, but there's absolutely nothing that says that we don't have a reference somewhere else, like Annie's saying, that they can just hit 4 keys and you know what this decision was without having to sort through the public record. I think if I put words in your mouth, Andy, on that.
No, I think that's exactly, yes.
Anything else on page 7? Page 8.
Why the difference on the number of votes for approval of a zoning ordinance amendment and a zoning map amendment? Is that state statute?
I believe that is
Yeah.
state statute.
That's weird.
Yeah, well, that's big, that's a tip of the iceberg. For state statutes.
That's a big change though, when you take something from home to, now all of a sudden you gotta put plants over there.
Yeah, I mean, if it's residential and you're not, you know, putting an industrial waste facility next, right, should take 2/3 the majority of the vote.
Build those 2 houses and put a waste station in there. Not gonna go well.
But transfer stations are cool.
No, you live in your own world. It's very interesting.
Yes, and many people have
You know what,
noticed that.
Susan, I agree with that. I used to love going to the dump back in Florida. I just loved going to it. It was just awesome. It was the highest point. You felt like you were in a mountain.
Anything else on page 8?
Creation or reduction of nonconformities. Why do we want to create more nonconformities?
I don't think that it's just when you're looking at these things, you would be looking to see that it is,
You don't want to create them.
yeah.
And it's saying, this is one of the things you need to look at. Are you creating or getting rid of a nonconformity?
Anything else on 8?
Compatibility with surrounding development patterns. When I was doing consulting for another city, that ag, for example, that has been in place for 2 or 3 generations, and residential subdivisions are encroaching on that. And then, for instance, saying, wait a minute, we have a residential subdivision here, so now your farming practices, which are legal, but have an odor, are no longer acceptable. So as we're looking at map amendments and rezoning, is it sort of the assumption that the long-term expectations are that it'll all be either residential or industrial? And so that compatibility with development patterns, I'm trying to figure out what that looks like and how we evaluate that.
Well, again, it's something they have to look at. On the other hand, if you have a farm there that's been there, they're, even if it's zoned differently, they're a conforming, non-conforming entity. They get to practice,
No,
they
they
get to
don't.
farm.
And also,
That
case
is-
law's pretty clear about coming to the nuisance, and you can't build a residence next to a feed lot and then be like, whoa, that feed lot's there and it's smelling up my neighborhood. That's coming to the nuisance, and if you want that to go, you owe them a ton of money. Spur v. Del Webb, that's the only thing I remember from planning law.
Well, but in two separate instances, one in White Bear Township and one in Grant, that is what happened.
Yeah, but usually it requires an immense change of money, like, hey, I'm paying to move your
None of us are
operations there.
attorneys, so I think that we should just be careful.
watch
And the
Law and
one thing
Order.
that I will say is that we can highlight this, we can address how we evaluate, and we can look maybe again at some of this evaluation criteria to make sure it fits for Forest Lake. We are a rapidly urban expanding community, and we are expanding into the agricultural, rural, and rural residential areas. And so, yes, I think that question of compatibility will come up, and maybe that's compatibility with future land use or, I'm not sure, but we can take a look at that one.
And what that was is looking at their specific language elsewhere that has more or less like, oh, neighborhood character, it's not impacting neighborhood character and things like that. That's just kind of simplifying that language, but we'll look into that.
And then whether the amendment benefits the city as a whole. Give me some examples of things like that. What kinds of things are you looking at that would benefit the city as a whole?
So just a really good example is the cell tower ordinance that, it's a private request that came in to change the zoning code. Yet all he was doing is asking to change the code. It didn't benefit one person, right? It benefits the community as a whole. Anybody who has single-family residential property that's 10 acres in size, that is institutionally guided, could apply for it. And then if an application comes through and is approved, the community as a whole benefits from it because that increases the cellular coverage in the community.
Thank you.
Anything out on 8? Page 9.
Site plan approval, that where you're at?
I'm sorry?
Yes, site plan approval.
Yes.
So any single-family detached and two-family dwelling would not require site plan review anymore?
They do not
They do
currently.
not currently. We haven't changed that in code.
Anything that is not bolded, underlined,
Okay.
is existing code.
But if you don't like it, I'd be glad to change it.
I would not actually suggest that we conduct site plan review for
testing out.
single-family or two-family dwellings. We don't have design standards for those types of uses.
The only time that has to come before us is when we do a lot split, right?
Yeah, but even then, we don't have any design standards for the exterior design of residential structures.
Right, but it still comes to us, right, for a split?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
They gotta show us they got a buildable lot that they've got
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
So if I'm on a rural residential lot and I want to put a duplex on there, it will not have to go through site plan review.
I don't know if a duplex is allowed in the rural residential zoning district. So this is the exemptions are for ag uses in the APC, Conservancy, Agriculture and Rural Residential, and then single-family detached wherever in the community. And then I think the next one is single-family attached, approved by PUD or subdivision.
Well, it's just any single family, it doesn't say in specific zoning district just says any single-family detached or two-family dwellings.
Yeah. So if
Anyway.
it's a zoning district that allows for single or two-family dwellings, then no, it would not need site plan review. The formal planning commission site plan review that is coming to this body, we're still gonna do our zoning reviews during building permitting process. We're still conducting an administrative site plan review to make sure it conforms to the zoning code.
Thank you.
Page 10?
Goes back, 4 goes back to that being explicit in that authority that minor changes that don't increase impact can be approved in-house.
Lighting. Somewhere further down, I did see that
Lighting plan 3?
yeah, in 4 minor external building modifications. We are still going to make sure that changes that a building owner would say are relatively minor, so that, like, for instance, the light covers the whole lot, so stay out of my business. We're still making sure that that light does not adversely affect neighboring properties.
This doesn't get into the actual regulation of lighting, this just gets into the plans that we want to see for lighting. I guess it does include the demonstration.
And that's language that we're adding to
Yeah.
address that, Commissioner. And again, this is just going through all the things that are required for, as you go through your plan, preliminary plat
No.
plan, yeah.
I'm having trouble going from page 9 to page 10.
About it from Magdalena
11.
1 form. So on C, 4C, it says preliminary review prior to developing a final site plan. Shouldn't that be a preliminary plan? Could we see a preliminary then a final? This is almost like a concept.
This is a sketch plan, and that isn't, staff has just internally, we've started to we've recognized that we need to align our nomenclature a little bit better. Building, the planning zoning world with our consultants, with our engineers, because I think what this really is more of a sketch plan. It's a napkin sketch, right? Somebody wants to come to you with a concept plan,
Yep.
they could. Nothing's saying they have to. So probably just highlighting this because we probably need to align it a little bit better with some internal discussions we're having on what's the difference between a sketch plan, a concept plan, a preliminary review, and a final review.
And so how we've been kind of communicating that to applicants is the sketch plans, this is like the, hey, come in, let's see, oh, yeah, if you develop here, you have to think about connecting water to it. Sewer is about 50 feet away, make sure you're looking at that. This plan has the right setbacks, you're good to go into that official, here's the money exchanging hands, application fee to go into the site plan process.
I'm wondering though if Chair Gerard, your concern is just the word preliminary in here and
Well, maybe it should just say prior to developing a site plan. And
says
don't say
it
final,
says-
don't say preliminary, just a site plan.
And my concern on the previous was things that are exempted from review are all the things in 4 that we just talked about that have effects on the look of the community or the lighting that goes onto somebody else's, and changes in the lighting, changes in signage won't be reviewed anymore, correct?
won't be reviewed by the planning commission, I believe, but it's still a staff review. And you really want to take signs on all by yourself, and I'm all for it.
We have a strong sign ordinance. I mean, it's a controversially strong sign ordinance.
It is definitely an ordinance, and it is strong.
I can sense some hesitation, and maybe what we need to do, I think we've retooled kind of how we're going to do boosts, right? We're not going to bring text to you, bring an ordinance right back. We're going to kind of work through some of these things, workshop style like this. Maybe what we need to do is do just a quick revisit of some of our design guidelines too, so you can kind of see what are some of those things that are codified that we're already taking a look at.
My homework.
Oh, I'd welcome it. Yeah, I'd welcome you coming in, and let's set a Friday apart and let's sit down. Go through this.
Then I'm sort of like, on page 10, it says, gonna talk about the lighting plan. Demonstration that light levels don't extend beyond the subject property line, but then that it's not part of site plan review. So I was just confused there.
I think what we're saying is that there's still a site plan review for kind of a minor change. And we're just saying that we're looking at the same things the planning commission would, but we recognize the intensity's not increasing, all this stuff. We're verifying those lights things within the administrative kind of review. If they are fitting within that tight box that we've developed, that nothing's really changing. They're just kind of updating, maybe putting in some new LEDs or something.
There already a lighting code that covers that, then why do we have to restate it?
We're not, we're just saying that this is what we're looking at, this is what we would be looking at.
Seems like there should be like a handout, here's the thing.
100%.
Here's where you go to look,
Yeah.
rather than have to rewrite it on every bullet.
Yep.
Yes, Commissioner Ablikowski, that is our goal. We have so much redundancy in this code, and a lot of times the words are slightly off, or just slightly off enough that you're like, I think this just canceled that one out. And the goal is really to kind of get streamlined policy procedures and then really start chipping away at those standards and standards for design, standards for construction, to just make it easier in the long run for everyone. Even, I think, in the future, you may end up seeing, so like, this is a really good page to stop on, sketch plan. We have in here that it says certificate of survey. And then it proceeds to tell you all the things that are required in a certificate of survey. This isn't common in code. What I anticipate will end up moving towards in due time are a development standards section that when a certificate of survey is required, these are the things, that would be required, that we're all just pointing to that one development standards section that says, okay, if you are gonna have a certificate of survey, it's not gonna outline here what you need on that, because this isn't the only place in the code that it says certificate of survey, and then all these things. We haven't cross-referenced all these things with the certificate of survey that's required at the PUD or the certificate of survey that's required at the preliminary plat. And we didn't wanna monkey with a lot of that stuff too much, because it would be our goal that in time, all that it says here is the following data shall be submitted or the data that shall be submitted shall be determined by council resolution. Once a year, the council just says, these are the things, There's a lot better ways to do this, because 9 times or more than likely, I'm assuming, I have a firm belief that certificate of surveys, A through whatever these are completely different than the 2 other sections of the code that mention certificate of survey. But we just didn't, we wanted to try to keep these things kind of together. But yes, it is our goal to eventually just say, those are the standards, go there for the law that governs.
A lot of words to say that.
Yeah.
I did.
Maybe she wrote this code.
Okay, page 11, the only change was to 3D. Good. No changes to page 12, so it moves us to page 13.
And a lot of that stuff was kept in for just context of what we were talking about.
can have a definition for discretionary judgment, right up there with reasonable. 13.
Anything else on 13?
No, under C, 5,
Wait, what page am I on?
I'm on page 13. C5, it reads, "The decision approving or denying a site plan shall be."
Recorded.
Recorded.
The rest of the sentence. And so, okay, never mind. I got, that was answered earlier. That question was answered earlier.
Moving to 14?
Yep.
Okay.
And lighting and signage is going to be in there, because they just said so.
And one of the things I
2A.
right here, the classification of amendments. So one of the things that I pointed out in the original email that I sent this out last week was that there's a lot of redundancy in this section, and you could see the redundancies. These will all be more or less kind of rolled up into this new Chapter 150, these rules of the road kind of chapter that we're proposing on top of this is exactly what Abby pointed out, is that having all of kind of the requirements for everything in one section, definitions, procedures, rules of engagement, so that everything's pointing to this one kind of biblical chapter of just here's how you develop here in Forest Lake, and here are the rules.
Any other comments on 14?
Home stretch. We're the home stretch, guys.
That brings us through round 1.
15,
There's no changes in the remaining of it.
it's all black.
Oh, this goes back to that kind of the same thing we had higher up in the thing, this definition of what minor and major is.
So in here, a major change is exterior materials. We said it was a minor earlier.
I think we can take a look at these to make sure that we're cross-referencing. It looks like it says primary exterior material, but we really don't have those hiccups. They're a little more clear between this list and those commaed sections or items.
Same then with 16 and 17 changes?
Good.
Good?
I'm trusting.
After a while, that's all we got left.
Truth.
Any other comments on round 1? Mine will be, this will be a slog. You know, so all of you who are remaining on the commission, thank you for slogging through this. I don't think if, as we see future ones, Steve, we're more than welcome to email Steve if he's just got some little sentence structure you think of words added or shouldn't be.
Oh, please, I
Tell
would
him ahead
welcome
of
it,
time, and
yeah.
he'll review all of those changes, like we did with the definitions. There was a lot of definitions that, I can't remember the person who presented. She goes, we got comment on this one, da-da-da-da-da. We got comment on this one, da-da-da-da-da. And it just helped move it along, because it can be quite the slog, especially once we get into having conversation. So the more minor stuff that we can just correct prior to that would just help move the meeting along from that standpoint.
I hear and obey.
I'm sorry?
I hear and obey.
Well,
We'll see. You heard.
I'll work very hard on it.
all right, so,
I truly appreciate the time looking at this, because this has been, our staff is really kind of like trying to find holes in our schedules and the things we're doing to kind of look at a lot of this stuff. The other thing that you have in front of you is a kind of an example of some of the graphics that we're messing around with to be able to incorporate into whatever our code updates. And that's more of getting along the line of making this more easily understandable, using a lot of these processes, not just to have in code, these graphics, not just to have in our code, but also use for our handouts and how we educate the people of Forest Lake when they come in with an application, understand what that process is.
Questions on the two?
No, I like this, I like the formatting, especially on how to use the zoning ordinance.
You can thank White Bear Lake for that.
Oh, Michael, you should have taken all the credit. He's too honorable. Yeah. We owe White Bear Lake a whole bunch of pizzas. I need to reach out to their
As long
planning
as you can
team.
get them for under $5, we're good.
Want me to bake a batch of brownies?
That would be, now you're talking. Yeah. They did a good job with their code update.
All right, so I will move to updates then. How about, we'll start with our honorable council person. You're the only one who gets up too.
What's that? Why not?
It's a respect thing.
Good evening,
I
Mr.
appreciate that.
Chairman, members, Planning Commission members. I don't really have anything to update on. However, I will answer any questions that you do have.
Questions of our fine council? Maybe you could introduce our special guest this evening?
Our beloved new Deputy City Clerk, Amanda Milks.
Nice to meet you all. This is probably my 4th week, so I look forward to working with you guys.
Welcome to the city.
It's good to have staff.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Just one quick thing, last meeting that I made mention about Martin is going to be leaving us from the Planning Commission. I didn't know that he was going to be here tonight. I'm glad to have him. I'm glad he's back, fully functional from having the flu or whatever he had. I'd like to say thank you again for your time, service on the Planning Commission, and we wish you all the best. And as I understand, you're going to still help us out with the Public Works Steering Committee, which I'll be looking forward to continuing to working with you on that. But thank you for your time and your service, sir.
Thanks, Jeff. Kind of in conjunction with that, I'd like to thank Paul and Jeff for giving me a shot on the Planning Commission. I've learned so much about city government. Each and every one of the planning commissioners, I've learned so much by doing what I do poorest, and that's listening. I've listened to each one of you in the following 9 months, and I've learned so much about city government and how it's run. It's kind of given me a taste for it, and so if I can find another way to serve city government that's not on Wednesday nights, I'm going to seek that out. Thanks for Abby for being a whirlwind of information and helping me out, and even going the extra distance and learning how to pronounce my last name. Thank you all.
Yeah, you know, there's council elections in November. They meet on Mondays, right?
It's only $5 to put your name.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Thank you very much.
Amanda, would you like to add anything?
Unfortunately, I don't think I can top that, so thank you.
All right. Abby?
Just a few quick announcements. We have with Commissioner Hoyman vacating his seat, we will have a new commissioner joining us next month. The council did appoint Mr. Corey Goodwin. Staff will be reaching out to him. Also next month, we will have new election of officers. So we always hold that at our first meeting in February. Just as a friendly reminder, we really love to help spread the efforts. I know Chair Gerard has been wonderful in leading this commission for a long time. He's also told me for the last several years that he loves to serve but may not want to serve the commission forever. And while Mr. Chair Gerard is here, this is a really good opportunity for someone else to step up into the chair role that he can help support you. So think about that. Reach out to Paul or myself, because I think it would be good if we can maybe see a different chair next year. Not to say that we don't like Paul. Paul does a great job, but he's here to help support somebody new if somebody new wants to step in that role. And next month, we're going to make new elections on that.
All right, Steve?
I want to say that's probably the worst thing I've heard.
Make new elections?
No, that there's a potential for Paul to not be the chair anymore. I think when I first met you, you said, and I really want to look at the code. I really want to update the code. And I was just like, oh man, I really want to like start looking at the code while Paul's here and he's interested in it. Now you realize, oh, that was a mistake. This is going to be a slog, and it is. One thing I wanted to say is that our staff is working this boost, but we're consistently running into a new work coming in front of you, and I want to inform you. We're currently in different stages entertaining 5 new subdivisions, 5. Some are coming in for, you've seen before in concept, some are coming as concept, some are coming as final that you've seen, but there are 5 that you'll be seeing in the next few months as we review them and execute them and go through that process. So it's going to be a busy February, March, and it's not even development season yet. So we definitely will have our work in front of us and going forward. So be prepared for that. And then coming, one of the first meeting in February, we plan on presenting not just some of these updates, but this Chapter 150 that we've been talking about, that kind of this roll up so that we can have a discussion about the makeup of Chapter 150, so that as we go into kind of the first public hearing, first ordinance, it's looking at what's in this Chapter 150, these rules of the road, as well as some of these administrative authorities that we're working through. Having that be a part of that. Now, that won't be the next meeting, but we'll work together as we define and look at our schedule when a public hearing should occur for an ordinance that would support these first step of changes that we're suggesting. And if we still have an appetite for future steps within this kind of Boost 1.0, this 2026 boost.
Questions of Steve? Michael?
Nothing from me.
Questions of Michael? Andy?
I will not be here at our next meeting again. I'll be in Florida, unfortunately.
Where, is it Fort Myers?
Fortunately.
Titusville? That's Brevard County, man. Represent the 321, sorry.
The work trip got here, so, sorry.
I hope you enjoy Florida. Where the guy right back here was just at, so I'm getting quite jealous of the warmth. Tim? Nothing?
No.
Come on. Any last words?
How much did you say that fee was to?
$5.
$5 to.
You make your own signs.
I'll door knock for you.
Yeah, you can actually give him that $5 because that's the maximum threshold you could give to somebody or a future candidate, right?
Keep on giving.
I have
Actually, I
nothing
take it
except
back. I
thank
don't
you,
know that you
Martin,
should be
for your
paying for
time on
somebody
Planning
else's.
Commission. It's been a pleasure. We look forward to your future endeavors with the city. And with that, the chair is looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a
Second.
motion, I have a second. Seconded?
Second.
Second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you all. Enjoy the cold.